Joining me now is senior Canadian journalist Terry Mirsky. Terry, appreciate you joining us this morning on India Today television. And just to give a background to the viewer, Terry has written extensively on this global Khalistan project. So he's definitely an expert on what the issue really is. Do you believe, Terry, that in many ways Justin Trudeau did not act as mature as he should have as a Prime Minister, giving out these statements, in many ways ruffling feathers with a country that he should have actually sat down on and ensured Canadian soil is not being misused by the pro-Khalistan element?
This is a remarkable turn of events where,
Yes.
I mean, today, this whole fiasco, diplomatically speaking, this whole diplomatic fiasco between India and Canada changed completely. Or at least the government of Canada is trying to change it completely from the old days where the problem was the Khalistanis. They were violent. They were bad people. We had to do something about them, although Canada did, of course, very little, and looked the other way a lot of the time, and disregarded and pandered to people who were not just representing the potential of violence, but actual violence in the extreme. Need I even remind people of the Air India bombing of 1985?
Yes.
31 completely innocent civilians wiped out. Since then, journalists, anyone who got in the way, beaten and sometimes killed, and of course, including witnesses at the Air India trial. So, having said all of that, that was the traditional picture. Now, it turned it on its head. The government of Canada has turned that picture on its head and said, no, the problem is India. It's Indian violence, oppressing people of Indian origin, principally in Canada. And that's why the Canadians say the Indian government was involved in hiring hitmen, basically 20-year-old punks, goons with guns in Canada who came on phony study permits. That's why they hired somebody to go out and kill Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey last year. They're now saying that India is the problem, not the Khalistanis, despite the savage record of violence on the part of the Khalistanis.
What is your understanding, Terry? Because I know from your book, Blood for Blood, every researcher, including yourself, would understand and examine the Pakistan angle of how clearly there is not just a certain rational movement, but it definitely has a certain terrorist, criminal element support shelter coming in from Pakistan against India. Yet Justin Trudeau is going ahead pandering to this network. What do you think is he getting from it? Because he's just ruined relationship with a country that's a rising power and would have actually helped sit with Canada and make a better world.
Well, I agree with you that Canada has said and done very little about the Pakistan connection, which of course has been fundamental for 40 years to the Khalistan cause. And Canada just never expressed any interest in it. Unless it comes right to their doorstep, they don't seem to care very much. Even when it did come right to their doorstep, as in the Air India case, they still didn't seem to care very much. And the investigation was lackadaisical and incompetent. And the culprits, for the most part, with one exception, got off. So I think what's happening now is that Trudeau's in for a penny, he might as well be in for a pound. What I mean is that he's already decided that he's going to make a step up and take the position that he would be a bad prime minister, a dishonorable prime minister, if he heard that Indian officials were involved in the murder of a Canadian citizen, and he said, "Man, that's okay. We don't mind if India comes over here and murders a few terrorists. Let's not make a fuss about it." That if I said that, he's saying to himself and to the country, then I would be a bad prime minister. That's his view of what he's doing. But of course now diplomatic relations are, well, they don't have any. It's over.
What do you think is happening or going to happen here on? This is huge. Our High Commissioner has been recalled. Canadian diplomats have been told to leave by 19th October, 11:59 p.m. How do you see? Do you think someone will be able to perhaps reconcile this relationship, or it's done and dusted now?
Well, I said it's over. I guess I'll take that back a little bit because we've always got to leave a possibility. You're right to answer the question that there is a possibility of a repair someday, somehow. In the short run, here's what it depends on. What? It's not the onus isn't totally on Trudeau. The onus is on both sides who have messed up this trial. the onus is on the Indian side to say, what are they going to do about the very serious allegations, which the government of India says is taking very seriously, made by the FBI and the Department of Justice in the United States. Yes, indeed, Trudeau was right. There was indeed at least one, and probably several more Indian
Yes.
intelligence officials who were involved in the murder of Harjit Singh Nijjar in Surrey a year ago. So the Indians so far have said, yeah, we take this very seriously. We're setting up a committee. It's going to be a great committee. And then what? What are they doing about it? Nikhil Gupta, the person named in the American indictment, has been extradited already from Czechoslovakia, and he's going to be facing trial. When that trial comes up, then there's going to be a reckoning, isn't there? Because if that evidence holds up in court, then the Indian side will turn out to have been smoke all this time and just delaying and dragging its feet and hoping to get away with it. So that could change the picture radically again. And after that, then the question will be, can they all strike a deal? Americans saying, okay, we want accountability for this. We want Indians to promise that they won't do it again and they will play nice in future. And if they cut a deal to sweep this under the rug politely and have some sort of accountability that they can show the public that, look, we're cracking down, we're doing something about this behavior. But if that doesn't happen, I'll be back to, sorry, diplomatic relations are over, and these will be two enemies.
This is absolutely unprecedented, Terry, from what we have seen. And I just want you to stay on with me, because this is what Western media is also quoting. And remember, Western media also has had a certain bias and perspective when it comes to specifically the reporting on India. And here's what Washington Post, one of the articles quoting Canadian officials, has said, that a wider campaign by the Modi government against Sikhs is alleged. Remember, India maintains this is definitely not about the community. This is about extremist criminal elements who are a part of this pro-Khalistan project. According to the report that has come in, claiming 6 Indian envoys were directly involved in crimes on Canadian soil, there's an operational chain, and that 6 secessionists are being targeted. Canada is even alleged a Lawrence Bishnoi gang, who we recently heard with an unverified claim of Baba Siddiqui's murder. All the way Canada is connecting to perhaps its work being done in Canada too. The Washington Post claims that the top Indian government official was confronted by Bishnoi's involvement in these attacks, also acknowledging, though, that this has been the history. But the government official denied knowing that, very interesting, that not much about the history of it. Terry, I bring you here. What about, these gang wars that India is being pinned with the blame on, rather than realize that there is in Canada full-on gang wars possibly taking place?
Yeah, well, right from the start, at the very dawn of the Khalistan movement, Canada took the position that it's not our problem, it's an Indian problem. I mean, when Air India blew up, sorry to harp on that, in 1985,
Correct.
most of the victims were Canadian citizens of Indian origin, and we sent condolences to India. And so it's your problem. It's an Indian plane. It's your problem. We're not overly exercised about it. But what's happening, yes, is that the Western media sees this with a different eye. And
yes,
the Indian watcher of the mainstream media in India, they see something different. They are not steeped in this history of Khalistani violence. They did not experience.
Terry, have you seen over your years in Canada anything like this? Because this is what India believes, that it has been pushed to take a stand of this manner. In Canadian politics, have you ever seen two countries with regard to Canada ever fail or downgrade relationship like this?
No, this is something quite unique. Where we're now at the stage of kicking out not the junior diplomats, but the top diplomats. Where do you go after that? Well, you don't, except to some sort of cold peace, I suppose.
Correct.
We might expect. But what I began to say is, I think that the reason behind what you're describing quite correctly, a different, you call it a bias of the Western media.
Yes.
Most people in the United States or the UK, where there are so many Sikhs, or in Canada, they did not experience and know absolutely nothing. There were 20,000 people killed in an absolutely savage insurgency by the Khalistanis in Punjab in the 1980s and the early 90s. They don't know about that. They think that what's happening is that Indians are going after nice, helpful Khalistan.
That's why, Terry, you know, it's your, and I'm glad that you know it. I appreciate your knowledge about it, because that's perhaps the reason that many more need to know about it, specifically in the Western nations. Appreciate you joining us, Terry Mirsky, Global Khalistan Project. He's extensively written on the Khalistan Project. So there are going to be a lot of perspectives that we'll continue to bring to you and to ensure that you know what's happening between India and Canada.